Hello. Okay, I cannot hear anyone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay, I just turned my mute off.
Oh, good. Oh, of
There's,
course.
oh, that looks cold.
Is there anybody there, Jenny?
She's got her mute. She's mute.
Oh, she's leaving.
Oh, I'm here too, but I'm still getting food.
Hey, Robert.
Hello.
Here's my food. Hey, Danita.
Why does it say recording?
Oh, I think Josh set it up. I forgot about that, to record, because we would like to be able to record the webinars.
Okay.
So if you don't want to, and we'll probably cut this introduction part out.
Okay,
So we'll just,
that sounds fine.
we'll edit out this part and just show the actual talk part, if that's okay.
Sure.
And if you'd rather not have it recorded, that's okay too.
No, that's fine.
You ready to go?
As ready as I'm going to be. So what do I need to do to show my screen?
To show your screen, so I am
This
going
is
to
different than the last time I was here.
So what I'm going to do is I will make you a co-host.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to share your screen. And I'm just learning how to do that. And I was hoping Lois was going to be here. Everyone's coming early today. So because Lois was going to let people enter, and I was going to do other stuff, but right now I'm doing it all. So bear with me, and I'm going to try and figure out how to do the co-host thing. Okay, so go to the manage participants. So apparently I just have to hover over you. Oh, there we go. I just made you the co-host.
Okay.
So you should be able to go down to where your video is.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Or is that where share screen is? Where is share screen?
I see share screen.
Oh, yes, you saw. Now you can see the button. So nobody else should be able to do that. Just you and me.
Okay, that's new. Yes.
Yeah, it's new to me too. Josh figured that out today. So.
Okay.
All right, so I should maybe make this, because I think we're attempting, because our conference that we were hoping to have in May.
Yes.
We're concerned that COVID is still going to be an issue.
Yes.
And so we're trying to prepare for the possibility that we have to do something online, because we don't want to cancel again. We've already canceled once.
Yeah.
And so tonight we're playing around with live streaming. I don't think we're going to live stream like on Facebook or anything. It's but Josh is looking into, he's got some software set up, and we want to be able to, of course, live stream the conference. Good. So we're kind of doing a dry run to see how the software works. As I say, I don't think it's broadcasting anywhere. It's just broadcasting into his server in his basement. but that's so that's another reason why we're recording it, so we can test that software out as well. Okay. So hopefully I'm not freaking you out or anything.
No, not at all.
You know, one of the local writing conventions just in August, they usually meet in August, they did the whole thing with Zoom. And what they did was they traditionally have panels, like panel discussions with about 4 people at the front of the room, sort of thing. And so they got a bunch of volunteers, and I was one who had Zoom accounts. And so we were assigned, or we chose X number of panels, you know, usually ones you want to see yourself. And we hosted them with our Zoom accounts.
Okay.
And so the biggest one I had was 80 some odd people.
Wow.
And so each panel had a moderator. So the moderator, it was their job to make sure the discussion stayed on track, and they managed it just like they normally would. It was my job to keep an eye on things and punt anybody who got inappropriate.
Right.
And also to read the comments in case, like sometimes there was just one presenter.
Right.
And, you know, when you're presenting and you're the only one, you're kind of focused on what you're presenting on the screen. So I would also keep an eye on the chat to see if anybody had questions.
Right.
And we didn't enforce muting, but people didn't really want to interrupt sometimes. And sometimes we left questions till the end, and I would read through them all and bring up ones that were appropriate. So
it's good to know, Danita.
Fairly well.
Okay, good. Because I'm writing all that down because we're just starting our look into the possibility of doing this online. We want to be prepared. You know, our goal is to do it in person, but if we can't, we can't. And we don't want to leave it for another year. We've got some great speakers who are very current, and you know, we really want to show them off and have a successful event. So I'm going to be watching very carefully. I'm going to 2 online conferences this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll help.
That will help. And I was at one in August, but I wasn't really watching it as much for learning myself. It was more of I wanted to go. So this is going to be a little bit of a different focus. So yeah, and is it okay if I call on you, Danita, if I need to, if I have some questions? Thank you.
And I know the organizers of that conference, it's When Words Collide. I know them quite well. So if you want anything like their guidelines for panelists and stuff like that, why reinvent the wheel? I can
exactly, because I don't want to start from scratch, because there's people out there who've done this. Exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad I mentioned this tonight, because that's going to be important to have these connections.
Sorry, was that When Worlds Collide? Did I hear?
When Words Collide.
Oh, I heard worlds as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
no,
clever.
I think my wife attended that.
Oh, yes.
So she's trying to write a book. So.
Well, that's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. So I just got to finish up, but I heard that. I'm like, hang on, that sounds familiar. So,
so can I ask you, not John, but everybody else, do you have a little share screen button at the bottom of your thing, or is it not there? You do have that. Okay.
I do have a share button, but it's when I click on it, it says it's disabled by the host. So the button is there, but it is not workable.
Perfect. Okay. And if you share screen, John, are you able to do it?
I can push it.
And it doesn't say disabled by host?
Nope, I can.
It's working.
To select the screen.
Oh, okay. Josh figured it all out.
And I just sent you my email, so you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Got that.
I'll put you in my contacts right now.
1 minute, we'll put you know.
Oops.
Oh, there's Sally.
Perfect. Got you in there now.
Just wanted to say hi to everybody before I put us back on mute.
How many people have you got there?
Hi.
And I.
How many?
2.
For now, it's early. You still got a minute.
You know what? It is warm. It is warm out here, as promised. These giant heaters up here are absolutely just raining heat down on top of our table. So I do have my little gloves on, but I took my coat off. I was so warm.
That's awesome.
Anyways, just wanted to say hi.
Josh has been busy today.
He has been busy today. Our tech people are working in the background.
Yes.
And thanks so much, John, for doing this again.
No
You're
worries.
so appreciate it so much.
Yeah, we'll give it a few more minutes to be, we'll start right away because we've got 8 people here and there's 2 there. And I think on the online meetup, it said there was going to be like 20 people. So, or 20
Yeah.
more, over 20. So we'll give it a few minutes and I think I would like to share my screen briefly.
Just 24 people, yes.
Yes. Hey, Lois. So maybe while we're waiting, I'm going to share a screen if that's okay. Because let's make sure that I can still let people in on this. Participants, there we go. I'm getting the hang of this. I've done this a few times now, so it's starting to become familiar. But I'm glad, well, we've got 8 so far. Hopefully we get more people, at least coming a little bit later. But welcome tonight. And I just wanted to just share a few things beforehand. We're going to be, and John noticed this, that we're recording tonight. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to post it anywhere. So, and we will take off this little introduction part where all the people are, from what I understand, we could do that. But we're trying out some software for being able to take our We Can Reason conference online if we need to. So we're trying to prepare for that possibility. And we are, oh, there's a whole bunch of people waiting to come in. Here we go. Oh, that's awesome. Give me 1 second. You can look at the Pascal's wager. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Just hang on. They're all coming at once. Okay. There we go. So we're up to 14 all of a sudden. So that's good. So anyway, if you haven't visited our webpage, this is our webpage. Hopefully you can see that. And there's our advertisement for Pascal's Wager, which is our talk for tonight. And I also wanted to promote our talk, which is coming up on the Thursday, the 29th. So it's a week and a bit away. And that's our Confessions of a Gay Priest. And this, if you go to our website, we've got quite a bit of information. And if you notice, you can buy his book. It's a really good deal right now if you buy it up to and including the day of the workshop. I think the ebook is really cheap. I don't know if the paper copy, because it's from the US, might not be the easiest, but apparently he's giving us a good deal for this particular event that we're having. So we're really looking forward to that. And if you haven't already checked out our website too, we can also look at what our past webinars were, so you can see what we've been up to. Oh, I forgot to publish. I've got a whole bunch more coming up. So I'm still working on that, but I do have our present ones tonight and next week. So hopefully you can make it next week. Now, the next thing that I would like to discuss, now that we have lots of people in here, is because they are quite large events with online, we usually get somewhere between like 15 to 30 people. If you have a question or a comment, Lois and I are going to be working together tonight, and I'm going to monitor. I'm going to give her the hosting as soon as we get started. so that she can watch and let people in. And I'm going to monitor the chat. So if you have questions, please don't ask out loud during the talk, and unless John, you want to do it some other way. But we're actually trying this out for our webinar, or our We Can Reason conference. We're just trying things out as we get closer to see how it works. So put your questions. Oh, here comes somebody else. Put your questions into the chat. I'm going to monitor the chat and the questions. And then when you're finished your talk, John, I will read you the questions that I see and try and summarize. If some people ask the same thing, then we'll be able to manage that. So hopefully, does that sound okay, John?
Sure, sounds wonderful.
Perfect. And there's still people coming in. So just, we're up to 15. So we'll give it till about 10 after. Does that sound right? What do you think, Lois?
Sure, that sounds good.
Good. Okay, well, how about I transfer that over
Okay.
to you be the main host, and then I'll just monitor. So make host. So you are now the host.
Okay.
And I already made John the co-host so he can share his screen as well and do the talk. Oh, is everyone good? We could all talk now. It's fine. Everyone staying warm?
Yeah, this is a crazy October.
Yes, Vincent. So Vincent just came in, and we have it set for recording, Vincent, because we're testing out some streaming software tonight. We're not streaming on Facebook or anything like that, but Josh is streaming it and into his basement, into his server, from what I understand. And what we're going to be looking at is the possibility of recording these events so that we can post them up on our website, etc. And we would definitely make sure, though, that if you don't want to be recorded, that you have your, like you have now, Vincent, you don't have your camera on, as well as, we would cut this first 10-15 minutes out, and we would go directly to the actual presentation. So, oh, is somebody getting reverberation in the audio? So Larry, is anybody else? So when that happens, Larry, sometimes signing out and coming back in helps. And sometimes headphones helps. So that's another thing that can resolve that. But I don't think you've had that problem before, have you?
I think I may have.
Okay.
I'll try rebooting and
Okay.
come back in.
So, so Lois, you can watch for him coming back in. Perfect. Always some technical issues. So I hope that that answers your question, Vincent. So yes, we are recording this. And you know how we were going to record a couple events and then we forgot to press the record button, and we realized halfway through or later on that we hadn't recorded the event. One of them was book club, because I think, Lois, you were coming late, so we promised to record it, and then we forgot to record it. But it turned out we didn't really get started until you came anyway, so it was all good. But because of that, Josh figured out a way that it automatically records all the time. And this software that he's using for streaming, apparently we can go in and edit and cut things out. So, we won't see, hopefully, all these people that are online. And if you don't like it, just as Jim has done, and Spencer and Vincent, just turn off your camera. So that would be fine too. And you can even take off your name. You don't even have to have your name there. So if you don't prefer not to have a name, you can make up a name, have some fun if you wanted. I think I've been a few different things. Right now I'm Atheist Calgary, so nobody knows who I am. I guess I should rename myself so you know who I am.
Hey, we have an Elvis here.
Oh, Elvis is good. Elvis is in the building.
Yes.
The only celebrity I even come close to resembling.
Okay, we're up to 16 people, so that's good. Yeah, it's working out okay. So I'm going to text Josh and see. Oh, he said to me he did have it live on Facebook right now, laugh out loud, but I can take it down. So he says he's taking it down. So I guess he can hear what I'm saying. So I better not tell any lies about Josh, huh? Oh, this technology, I try hard, but you know, sometimes it's just, it's a little beyond me. But
It's a good thing we've got Josh.
Exactly. So yeah, anybody who's come late, if you have any questions, if you can mute, and actually that's another thing, Lois, if you can be in charge of muting people, because me not being a host anymore, I won't be able to do that. So if somebody forgets or can't figure out how to mute themselves, if you can make sure everybody's muted, that would be great.
Sure.
And at the end, when John's finished talking, then we can, while he's talking, please feel free to enter into the chat questions and I will present them to him when he's finished his talk. So it's 7:10. Have we got Larry back yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, there he is. So why don't we get started? It's 10 after and people who are late can just join in. So John, if you would like to tell us about something about yourself for those of you who don't, for those who may not be familiar with who you are or who weren't at your last one, please take it away. And thank you so much for doing this for us.
Well, thank you very much for everybody for coming tonight. Not really much to say about me. I'm just interested in talking about different subjects on religion. And the last talk I did was on street epistemology. And I find this is a really good way to talk to people, to not they believe. And tonight I just thought we'd talk about Pascal's wager, because that seems to be something that says I'm muted.
No, you're okay now.
Okay, I'm okay now. The street epistemology is a great way to talk to people so that they don't feel that there's a fight between you and what they're thinking about. And tonight is about Pascal's wager. So let me just get started with that. So Pascal's wager, what if you're wrong? So for what I want to be clear about is none of the information I present tonight is my original ideas. All this information is gleaned from YouTube articles and other articles that I've read. I may have adjusted some of the words to be more clear. Most of the YouTube videos are cited in the meetup description. What I would like to talk about is who is Blaise Pascal? What is Pascal's wager? Watch 3 short videos, talk about how to respond to Pascal's wager and how to respond to someone when they say, what do you have to lose? Pascal was born on June the 19th, 1623 and died August 19th, 1622. He was 39 years old. He was a French mathematician, physicist, inventor, writer, and Catholic theologian. Pascal's development of probability theory was his most influential contribution to mathematics. Originally applied to gaming, today it is extremely important in economics. Pascal was a very sick man for all of his life. He became very religious after a serious carriage accident in which he believed he was saved by God. The basics of Pascal's wager is, if you believe in God and it is true, then eternal paradise. If you believe it is not true, nothing happens. If you don't believe and it is not true, nothing happens. If you don't believe and it is true, then punishment is eternal suffering. The key here is for 3 of the options, either nothing happens or eternal paradise. For only one option, you are subject to punishment. According to Pascal, if you gain all. If you lose nothing. Wager then, without hesitation, that God exists. This only works for one God. What about the tens of thousands of other gods? So I can share the screen.
Okay, you should be able to now. Yeah.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll hit that
I'm
play.
a philosophy professor at Harvard, and today I want to talk about Pascal's wager, an argument for belief in God. There have been many different arguments for theism throughout the history of philosophy, but Blaise Pascal The 17th century French thinker employed a particularly unusual strategy. He did not try to prove that God exists. He didn't even try to argue that God's existence is more likely than not. Instead, he lifted an approach from the gambling hall and argued that, given the odds and the potential payoffs, belief in God is a really good deal. Even if the chance that God actually exists is low, rationality, he claimed, compels us to wager for God. First, consider a different decision problem, whether or not to buy a lottery ticket. Holding fixed the price of the ticket, the sensible approach is to focus on two considerations. First, what are the chances of winning? And second, what is the size of the payoff? Holding fixed the payoff, the higher the chance of winning, the better the deal. But, equally, holding fixed the chance of winning, the larger the payoff, the better the deal. Most actual lottery tickets are not a good deal at all, but we can easily imagine a hypothetical lottery that's a really good deal, even if the chance of winning is still very low. For example, even if the chance of winning is only 1 out of 100, if the payoff is $1 billion, and the cost of the ticket is, say, only $1, it makes sense to buy a ticket. Pascal claims that belief in God is, by similar reasoning, an infinitely better deal than this. He reasons as follows. Either God exists, or God does not exist. If God exists, and you believe, the payoff is an eternity of happiness, an outcome of infinite value. If God exists and you don't believe, things will go much worse for you. So, if God exists, you're better off believing. Now, if God doesn't exist, then regardless of what will happen to you if you believe, and what will happen to you if you don't believe, regardless of whether the value of each of those outcomes is positive or negative, and regardless of whether the first is larger than the second, or vice versa, this much seems clear. The value of each outcome will at least be finite. Now, here's where the mathematics of infinity works its magic. Since infinity times any non-zero probability is still infinity, and infinity plus any positive or negative finite value is still infinity, the expected value of believing in God is infinity, which is definitely greater than the expected value of not believing. Now, something about this reasoning might strike you as a little bit fishy. Indeed, philosophers have provided many objections to this version of Pascal's wager. One objection starts from the observation that the world contains many different religions, which postulate different gods, some of which would, if they exist, punish believers of other religions. Another objection claims that even if Pascal's reasoning is good as far as it goes, it has no practical importance, since someone who doesn't already believe can't just decide to truly believe. A third objection holds that even if you could decide to believe, someone who believed in God because they thought it was a good gamble wouldn't be given the infinite reward. Today, though, I want to focus on a different objection. This objection is that Pascal's wager proves too much. First, notice that there's some chance that if you attend just one church service, you will be converted and become a staunch believer. No matter how low this chance is, as long as it's non-zero, given the infinite payoff if God exists, the same form of argument given before would allow us to conclude that the expected value of attending just one church service is infinite. Perhaps this doesn't seem so crazy yet, but notice that there's also some non-zero chance that if you go to the beach tomorrow morning, right at dawn, you'll have a religious experience and be converted. The same is true of going to the mountains at dawn tomorrow, or for that matter, of riding a Ferris wheel, or playing the guitar, or brushing your teeth, or, well, anything at all. For every possible action you might perform, there's some chance that doing so will give you a religious experience and make you a believer. And so, by the same pattern of argument given before, every possible action has infinite expected value. This can't be right. For one thing, it has a consequence that every possible action has the same expected value as every other possible action. And so there's never any reason to do one thing rather than another. Given the absurdity of this conclusion, it seems this line of reasoning must go wrong somewhere, but I'll leave it to you to think through exactly where it does go wrong. To conclude, I'll describe a different version of Pascal's wager, which may avoid some of the objections mentioned so far. There's some evidence that this version is closer to the argument as Pascal himself actually intended it. We start off with the same first premise. If God exists, you're better off as a believer than as a non-believer. But the second premise of this argument is different. It claims that even if God doesn't exist, you're still better off as a believer than as a non-believer. If so, then you're better off as a believer, whether or not God exists, and so you should believe in God. This argument relies on a very plausible general principle, which says that if, no matter what the world is like, the outcome of choosing option A will be better than the outcome of choosing option B, then you should choose option A. It's hard to argue with that. The crucial question for this version of Pascal's wager, though, is whether the second premise is right. Is it true that even if God doesn't exist, you're better off as a believer than as a non-believer? There are some preliminary results in psychology that suggest that believers may be happier than non-believers on average in certain respects. But the data are still inconclusive, and there may be important differences between different people, different cultures, and different religions. A final verdict on this version of Pascal's wager will have to wait another day.
In
the 17th century, French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal proposed an idea, a kind of pragmatic argument as to why people should bet their lives upon God's existence. It came later to be known as Pascal's wager and can be summed up in the following question. What if you're wrong? What if you, being a disbeliever, are wrong about God's existence and he does actually exist? Okay, the argument goes as follows, that from Pascal's perspective, he was a Christian apologist. And so from his perspective, he thought that if the believer was right and the non-believer was wrong, then the non-believer, the one who's wrong, is going to suffer an eternity in hell. Whereas if it was the other way around, if the non-believer is correct and the believer is wrong, then the person who's wrong in that situation doesn't suffer any consequences at all. So by weighing up each side, it seems most logical that you should place your trust in God's existence. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before. It's very popular among theists when arguing against atheists, yet peculiarly not when arguing against people who happen to have a different faith. And I think this highlights the first contention that I have with Pascal's wager, which is that it doesn't specify any particular God. If you're a Christian using Pascal's wager, I could just as easily ask you, what if you're wrong and Muhammad truly is the last prophet of God? Or if you're a Muslim, the same could be said, but vice versa. The first commandment issued to Moses on Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Okay? The God of the Old Testament is a self-admittedly jealous God. You only have to read a few select verses from the Old Testament to realize that God is never particularly happy when people decide to pray to the wrong deity. Okay? The first commandment is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Not thou shalt not deny me, not thou shalt believe in me, but thou shalt have no other gods before me. And this implies that which God you decide to pray to is at least as important and possibly more important than choosing to pray to a God at all. And in this respect, atheists might actually be better off than people who are part of the wrong religion. Okay? If you get to the pearly gates and you're stood there as an atheist next to a Muslim, God might look at you and think, well, at least you said, I don't know. You chose not to believe in this God, but that was just based upon lack of evidence, whereas the Muslim was praying to the wrong God. And who do you think he'd look upon more harshly? But okay, let's give Pascal the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that if there was a God that existed, it would be the Christian God. Let's say that he's got the philosophy right. You still got a pretty big problem on your hands, and that is the fact that you can't choose what to believe in. Okay? To illustrate my point, imagine I asked you to start believing that Australia does not exist. Okay, I want you to believe that Australia is not there. Okay, you can tell yourself that Australia doesn't exist. You can tell your friends and family that it doesn't exist. You can ignore photos and videos, and you could never book a holiday there. But could you really believe that Australia doesn't exist when you know the contrary to be true? I don't think you could. And by this, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that I know that God does not exist with the same certainty that I know that Australia does exist. I'm just using it as an analogy to point out that you cannot believe something just because you want to. You have to genuinely be convinced of it or genuinely know it to be true. Or as Richard Dawkins put it in The God Delusion, believing is not something you can decide to do as a matter of policy. I can decide to swear on a stack of Bibles that I believe every word inside them, but that can't make me actually believe it if I don't. Pascal's wager can only ever be an argument for feeling belief in God. If I were laying on my deathbed, terrified of the prospect of hell, but not quite able to truly convince myself of God's existence, I could baptize myself, I could become a Christian. But when I stood before God, he'd see right through it if he was truly omniscient. He'd know that the only reason I'd converted to Christianity, the only reason that I'd chosen to believe in him was out of fear and out of weighing up my chances rather than love and adoration. Do you really think that if God exists, while there are people who devote their entire lives to worshipping him, who he left in death, he would also permit entry to people who, on their deathbeds, just decided, why not? I don't think so. And God forbid you get to heaven and it's Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, and you just converted to Christianity. Well, then you'd really be in the shit. It seems to me that any intelligent God would far more appreciate intellectually honest skepticism than a half-hearted ass-kissing just in case. But let's not forget that even if not, if God truly does require me to believe in him to get into heaven, he could easily achieve this. Okay, I might not be able to tell you what would convince me of God's existence, but if there's anybody that does know, it's him, the omniscient creator. This means one of two things. Either God can't make me believe in him, which doesn't make any sense. This is an omnipotent, omniscient being. He knows exactly what to do and has the means to do it. But that only leaves the option that he doesn't want me to believe, that he's preventing me from believing in him, in which case I would submit to this God when standing before him at the pearly gates, that it's his fault that I'm an unbeliever. I will not be blamed for my infidelity. I will not kiss the feet of such an evidently apathetic, or perhaps worse still, capriciously malignant supernatural thug who chose to reveal himself to some, but knowingly denied such a revelation to me, and then has the audacity to claim that I should have to pay for it. Whose God is this, and why would anybody wish to be a slave to his will? So there are the majority of my main contentions to Pascal's wager. Of course, this is a discussion. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Do leave a comment. I did put out a tweet asking people what their best response is to the question.
When you were little and your mom told you to eat your spinach so you'd grow up big and strong? Or in college, when you set your clock 10 minutes ahead to fool yourself to get to class on time? We all engage in useful fictions, things that we choose to believe because they just make life easier. And when we do this, we are being pragmatists. Pragmatism is based on the theory that finding true beliefs is less important than finding beliefs that work. practically in the living of your life. In this view, it doesn't really matter whether spinach actually helps muscle growth. If eating spinach will improve your life and believing that it will make you strong convinces you to eat it, then it's a useful belief, which is all that matters. Pragmatism is relatively recent as philosophical movements go, but some of the most well-known American pragmatists, like William James and I would argue Indiana Jones, have an ideological ancestor in the 17th century mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal. You can be a pragmatist about basically anything: knowledge, spinach, metaphysics, ethics, or whether it's actually 11:30 right now or 11:40. But Pascal took a pragmatic approach to one of the biggest issues in philosophy: God's existence. Pascal was a theist, which given his place in history may not be all that surprising. But what is weird is that Pascal's argument for God's existence had very little to do with whether God was actually real. Instead, it had everything to do with whether belief in his existence was practical. This reasoning became known as Pascal's wager, and it's really a gambler's argument for religious belief. Pascal's thinking went like this: either God exists or he doesn't, and reason will never give us an answer. So you must choose blindly to believe or not to believe in God. You can't abstain from choosing. If you choose to believe in God and he exists, you get an infinite reward, heaven. If you choose to believe in God and he doesn't exist, you're not really out much. If you choose not to believe in God and he doesn't exist, you also don't gain much. If you choose not to believe in God and he does exist, you get infinite punishment, hell. Therefore, the smart bet is to put your chips on God existing every time. Pascal argued that if there is the slightest chance that God exists, even if that chance is low—
Hey John, can I interrupt for a second? Can you pause it?
The stakes are so high. In the face of incomplete information, Pascal decided we should play the odds and believe whatever offers us the greatest benefit. Kind of brilliant, right? But there are a couple of ways you could argue against this. You might say Pascal's done the math wrong, that choosing to walk the straight and narrow in the service of an imaginary deity actually does cost you something. Like you might miss out on stuff that you would otherwise want to do, like sleeping in on Sunday mornings, or living a heavy metal rockstar lifestyle, or I don't know, coveting stuff. By this logic, you'd lose out if you abstained from all of that in the name of something that ended up not being real. But Pascal, like William James, disagreed with this line of reasoning because he saw great personal benefit in being a believer. He thought theists have better lives not because God is blessing them with some kind of reward, but because belief simply has inherent benefits, like the security of feeling that the world is ordered and meaningful, that someone is always looking out for you, that death isn't the end. Now, even if you agree that religious belief is comforting, you might still—
John, hey John.
Believing—
Hey,
Yes.
something because it's
we can't understand the video because it's going too fast.
Okay.
Can you, like, this guy talks fast anyways, but can you start this one again and just put it on regular speed?
Yeah, start this one again.
Okay.
Yeah, we've
Thank
got
you.
quite a few requests from everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace. Share your passion with the world.
Remember when you were little and your mom told you to eat your spinach so you'd grow up big and strong? Or in college when you set your clock 10 minutes ahead to fool yourself to get into class on time? We all engage in useful fictions, things that we choose to believe because they just make life easier. And when we do this, we are being pragmatists. Pragmatism is based on the theory that finding true beliefs is less important than finding beliefs that work practically in the living of your life. In this view, it doesn't really matter whether spinach actually helps muscle growth. If eating spinach will improve your life and believing that it will make you strong convinces you to eat it, then it's a useful belief, which is all that matters. Pragmatism is relatively recent as philosophical movements go, but some of the most well-known American pragmatists, like William James and I would argue Indiana Jones, have an ideological ancestor in the 17th century mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal. You can be a pragmatist about basically anything: knowledge, spinach, metaphysics, ethics, or whether it's actually 11:30 right now or 11:40. But Pascal took a pragmatic approach to one of the biggest issues in philosophy: God's existence. Pascal was a theist, which given his place in history may not be all that surprising. But what is weird is that Pascal's argument for God's existence had very little to do with whether God was actually real. Instead, it had everything to do with whether belief in his existence was practical. This reasoning became known as Pascal's wager, and it's really a gambler's argument for religious belief. Pascal's thinking went like this: either God exists or he doesn't, and reason will never give us an answer. So you must choose blindly to believe or not to believe in God. You can't abstain from choosing. If you choose to believe in God and he exists, you get an infinite reward, heaven. If you choose to believe in God and he doesn't exist, you're not really out much. If you choose not to believe in God and he doesn't exist, you also don't gain much. If you choose not to believe in God and he does exist, you get infinite punishment, hell. Therefore, the smart bet is to put your chips on God existing every time. Pascal argued that if there is the slightest chance that God exists, even if that chance is low, only a fool would bet against his existence given that the stakes are so high. In the face of incomplete information, Pascal decided we should play the odds and believe whatever offers us the greatest benefit. Kind of brilliant, right? But there are a couple of ways you could argue against this. You might say Pascal's done the math wrong, that choosing to walk the straight and narrow in the service of an imaginary deity actually does cost you something. Like you might miss out on stuff that you would otherwise want to do, like sleeping in on Sunday mornings, or living a heavy metal rock star lifestyle, or I don't know, coveting stuff. By this logic, you'd lose out if you abstained from all of that in the name of something that ended up not being real. But Pascal, like William James, disagreed with this line of reasoning because he saw great personal benefit in being a believer. He thought theists have better lives not because God is blessing them with some kind of reward, but because belief simply has inherent benefits, like the security of feeling that the world is ordered and meaningful, that someone is always looking out for you, that death isn't the end. Now, even if you agree that religious belief is comforting, you might still question Pascal's motives. Does believing in something because it's the safest bet really win you a ticket to heaven? Doesn't God want you to be less self-interested when it comes to believing in him? Well, not according to Pascal. He thought how and why you choose to believe doesn't really matter because the fact is God doesn't care how he gets you, as long as he gets you. Okay, so how do you will yourself into believing in something just because that's where the smart money is? Easy. Pascal said you essentially brainwash yourself into true belief so that what starts out as self-interest can eventually grow into an honest conviction. And you do this basically by walking the walk and talking the talk. Start going to church, start praying, hang out with other believers. At first, it might seem weird and disingenuous, but over time, it'll become an ingrained part of your belief system. You know what it's kind of like? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's probably pop culture's finest allegory of pragmatic belief in action. Throughout the whole Indiana Jones trilogy, I'm just going to pretend the fourth one was never made, Indy is painted as a pretty agnostic character. He hunts religious relics for a living, but the powers that those relics are said to possess are just hocus pocus to him. So at the end of the Last Crusade, spoilers, Indy manages to find the Holy Grail in an ancient temple after getting through a bunch of booby traps. And each trap is kind of a test of faith. He has to know where to kneel, how to spell the name of God, and he has to jump into an abyss with the hope that he will somehow survive. Indiana ends up passing all of those tests, but not because he suddenly stops being agnostic and starts believing in God, at least not that we know of. Instead, he just does what he has to do. He's literally going through the motions. There's something about that that would make Pascal proud, because to him, it would probably look like Indy was on the path to eventually truly believing. Now, some critics have pointed out that when it comes to a really usable belief system, you're going to need more than just fake it till you make it. For example, maybe you were one of those kids raised in a religious household who was just never feeling it. We all know people who were immersed in a culture of religious belief from birth, but end up rejecting those beliefs as adults. And for those people, trying to force yourself to believe is not only ineffective, it can lead to some pretty serious unhappiness, the exact opposite of what a pragmatist wants. So it might be that for a pragmatist, the best advice for non-believers is that they just gotta live their lives. Maybe they'll find God and maybe they won't, but making yourself swallow it like medicine doesn't seem like the way to maximize belief. Okay, so Pascal said that we should believe in God because belief is just practically useful. But Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century Danish philosopher, went even further. He adopted the famous tenet of fideism, stating, I believe because it is absurd to believe. Fideism is the school of thought that says religious belief has to come from faith alone. It says stuff like arguments and evidence actually kill what's great about religion, which is wonder and mystery. Kierkegaard said that the fantastic thing about belief in God is that it's entirely irrational. You can't do it with your brain. You have to take what he called the leap to faith. And again, here I turn to Indiana Jones. Remember when Indy faces that last test of faith / booby trap in The Last Crusade? He has to try to make an impossible jump across a scary pit to get to the Holy Grail. There is no way he can do it. It's suicide. But it turns out there's a bridge. He can't see it. But in order to find out that it's there, he has to take that step. He has to take a chance on something that defies all reason. That's what religion is all about, according to Kierkegaard. We jump and hope like hell that God catches us. And the only way to know is to jump. We have to surrender reason to get to truth. Now, I hate to break it to you, but this is the end of our unit on the philosophy of religion. I'm interested to hear what you think about that in the comments. So before we go, I want to head to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy. Our old friend...
Am I still on now? Yeah, okay. So the videos are done and we can go on with the talk. So suggestions on how to respond. They may ask, how do you know there is no God? I'm not saying there is no God. I have not been shown sufficient evidence to show God or gods exist. Why should you believe in your God and not in the tens of thousands of other gods? How does your God manifest in reality? How do I tell the difference between your God that doesn't manifest in reality and a God that does not exist? The burden of proof is the default position is to not accept a claim until there's sufficient evidence to support the claim. A courtroom analogy. A person is either guilty or not guilty. The prosecution has the burden of proof to show guilt. A person who is not guilty does not mean they are innocent. It only means sufficient evidence has not been provided to show they are guilty. Someone claiming there is a God has the burden of proof to provide sufficient evidence to show their gods exist. It is not up to me to show their God does not exist. Is it reasonable for me to show other gods, fairies, leprechauns, ghosts do not exist? If they can't provide sufficient evidence to show their gods exist, then why do they believe? We want to put a pebble in their shoe. You don't fear things you are not indoctrinated in. Does this mean your God doesn't do anything to confirm he exists? Instills in you a fear of eternal punishment as a way of coercing you into loving him? Do you love someone based on the threat of punishment? What are the characteristics of a religious relationship? The relationship is inaccessible and vague, jealous and has a temper, blames others for everything. You are told you are not good enough, threatens violence for non-compliance. Don't believe, you're going to hell. You will never survive without them. You just can't leave them. How is that different from the characteristics of a battered partner? So in summary, Pascal's agreed belief was not simply a choice. One should simply act as if one believes, one should pretend to believe. Are you really going to fool your God? Pascal's wager is specifically set up to compare a particular version of Christianity with non-belief. Pascal's wager does not take into account all other religions. If more religions were compared, do you believe in the religion with the best heaven or avoid the religion with the worst hell? Could it be Pascal's wager is a test? People who are gullible and accept things without evidence are going to receive the worst afterlife? How would you know this is not a gullibility test? What would people who say, I don't have enough evidence to believe this yet? How could a God be considered moral if he punishes someone forever for sincerely not being able to accept something without good evidence? So, what if you got to lose? Pascal's wager is presented as if failing to make this decision, you have lost nothing. This is not true. You have basically lost your whole life. The only life you have, every penny you've donated to a church, every minute you've spent pondering God, every moment spent in prayer, seeking assistance from on high instead of actively working to solve the problem. The atheist wager. Is it better to live your life as if there is no God and try to make a world a better place for you being in it? If there is no gods, you will lose nothing, and you will be remembered fondly by those whom you have left behind. If there is a benevolent God who will judge you on your merits and not on whether or not you believe in him, God should judge you on who you are, how you lived your life. If you have made the world a better place instead of blind obedience. So that's all I have for tonight. So
yeah, I've got one statement and one question for you, John.
Sure.
The first statement is from Larry, and he was commenting on how in Pascal's day, not believing may have gotten him put in jail, which is like that in some places in the world today, I guess, but luckily not where we live. But I thought that was an interesting comment. I wonder how much of that caused him to come up with his wager.
But there were so many people up until even the 1800s or 1900s that if people didn't believe in God, even today, you cannot be in the United States, you cannot apply for, or you have difficulty being in government if you don't believe in God. So It's still on today. It's not back then.
And people use it, as you said, I think in your talk, as an argument to
Yes.
be a theist. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second one, so Lois, correct me, because there's one word in here that I'm not 100%, I think it's a mistype. So the next one's from Lois, and it says, I don't agree that, quote, believing, and it says, but God?
I'm sorry?
Believing in God, maybe believing that God does not exist is neutral. I think that's what it is. Yes, she's nodding.
I hear you. What do you want?
So, well, it says, I don't agree that believing that God does not exist is neutral. If you believe in a non-existent God, you waste much of your life with worship and don't accomplish life's goals or enjoy the only life that you have. What do you think?
I'm sorry, try that again. If I don't believe.
It says, she doesn't agree with the statement, believing that God does not exist is neutral. She says, if you believe in a non-existent God, you waste much of your life with worship and don't accomplish life goals and or enjoy the only life that you have. So in other words, she doesn't think it's neutral. She thinks it's better. Like it's not a new, is that right, Lois? It's better to not believe in God.
I'm sort of the understanding is that you should only believe in things that whether you have sufficient evidence to believe that it is true.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And she said that in quotes. So I think was that in one of Lois? Was that in one of the?
It was one of the four options. You know, if you believe in God, but God does not exist.
Right.
Nothing happens.
Supposedly neutral, but
right. You're saying it's a loss in that chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So back to the politics thing, though. Let's say I know for a fact that God doesn't exist. There can still be an argument for pretending you believe if it allows you, for example, to win an election.
Right.
Because the majority of the electorate believe.
But that's what Pascal was saying, is that you should force yourself to believe because you have nothing to lose.
Yeah. My argument is screw the convince yourself, just pretend. Don't actually believe, because I don't buy, all those other arguments saying, which God do I believe in, blah, 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 all that stuff. I'm just saying there is a potential benefit to pretending you believe without actually believing.
Like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Because I see I see the odds that any particular religion is right is close to zero. So that's a no-brainer for me. So instead I say, assume there is no God, is there benefit to either convincing yourself there is one, I don't really think so, or pretending you do believe to fit into society better.
And I'm pretty sure that happens.
I'm just saying that's a possibility.
I'm pretty sure that happens in a lot of places in the States, because if there's a lot of people, I know of a couple of friends who were very religious, they do not believe any longer, and they've been rejected by their family, and they're devastated by that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people in that situation would believe in God, just pretend to believe, just to stay within their family.
And I've done it a few times. I was baptized Catholic. I was living in a small town where it was preferable for non-religious reasons for my son to go to the Catholic school. So because I was Catholic, I was able to send him to the Catholic school. Non-believer, but technically I'm a Catholic, so I got that benefit. I also was in the Boy Scouts, and my son was in the Boy Scouts, and technically you need to believe in God to be in the Boy Scouts. So I played along.
Well, I think a lot of politicians are skeptical, at least, if not non-believers, but they just can't admit it or they won't get elected in most states. But a few of them in the US are coming out. There is a sort of a secular group in Congress now.
Yeah.
But I agree that you can't force it. You can't make yourself believe something that you don't believe.
I agree, although there is the possibility that if you entrench yourself in it, you might come to believe it.
Maybe.
I'm
No,
saying
I tried that.
I think
I've
the
tried that
possibility
for-
exists. I personally don't think I ever would, but
Go ahead, Brett.
I was say, Mike, I tried that for many years. It doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. I'm just saying it probably would work for some people. But not probably for a true skeptic.
Yeah.
It's interesting on the political front how different Canada is. If a Canadian politician came out as a evangelical Christian, I think he would probably hurt his chances. Whereas in the US, it's an asset. It's really quite a contrast.
I think you've seen that before.
That's probably true unless you're running for the Conservative Party, in which case it might be an asset.
Stephen Harper kept his affiliation pretty quiet.
Oh.
On the other hand, what's his name, who was just the previous leader before now, Scheer. He was actually criticized a lot because he let his religious beliefs come to the fore.
Really?
Harper was in the Alliance Church, I believe.
Yes.
Is in the Alliance Church. Yes.
Yeah, Scheer's big issue was being a Catholic, a devout Catholic. He was trying to walk a very fine line on reproductive rights and abortion, you know, and he needed those votes to get elected leader, but then he was constantly, you know, having to try and kind of push it off or not make it an issue in Parliament. So there was a bunch of issues there.
The cat had a comment.
Yeah, sorry, the cat has a lot of comments.
That's awesome.
In some cultures, being in the wrong religion can get you killed. Even being in the wrong sect of the right religion could be deadly.
Yeah. Well, Ali Rizvi's book, The Atheist Muslim, that's why he used that title, was because in Muslim majority countries, there's a lot of atheists, but they can't say so. And so that's why he used the title, The Atheist Muslim.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of that book, do you remember the section where he's in school, and I believe it's Saudi Arabia, in a multicultural classroom, and a kid comes from Scandinavia, and the first thing all the kids ask, because there's Jewish kids and there's the two sects of Muslim and there's Christians, and the first thing they ask this kid is, well, what religion are you? And he was confused. He didn't know what that was. And he was like, well, I don't have a religion, and they couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. And my son right now is in California, and he's just finished his PhD, and his lab mates, I guess religion came up, and they asked my son, who was raised without religion, what religion are you? And it was the same thing. They couldn't. Yes, and they're from all over. They're from Iran. They're from, and China. So China was surprising that they were astounded. But they apparently, his lab mates were quite surprised that he had no religion. They didn't know that could be a thing.
Wow.
From these cultures, which I thought was very interesting.
That is, especially in California.
Yeah, you would think, right? Yeah. So what that's taught me is you can never assume.
Right, yeah. Well, I was surprised when, I was doing sort of I can't even think of the right word, some time off to do some research when I was teaching, and this was at Michigan State, and a couple of grad students and I were walking along, and they were talking about the purpose of life, and I said, well, if there's going to be any purpose for my life, I'm going to have to create it. And one of the grad students looked at me and said, you really believe that? And I said, yeah.
Like, and it's an option?
I was surprised that he that he was surprised.
Yes. Well, what's really interesting for me too, I'm a math teacher and I went to university. I'd never even heard of Pascal's wager until I joined this group. I just know Pascal very well. Pascal's triangle.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, just the different culture. I'd never heard that before. So it's very interesting to me to hear that there is another side. Like you said, I think he was a philosopher, so makes sense. Philosophers tended to do math in those days.
But also you have to remember is that people disguise the Pascal's wager when they say, what have you got to lose by believing? And that's just a key sign that they're really talking about Pascal's wager. So it can be hidden when somebody's talking to you about it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I had heard of the argument long before I heard it associated with Pascal.
Yeah.
So basically, when someone says, what do you have to lose, they mean Pascal's wager.
That is correct, yes. So then you have to say, come back with them and say, well, you've got a lot to lose by believing.
Right.
I wish I had replied, I had my sanity to lose if I believed.
Good point.
I always think of it about 30 years too late. I first heard about Pascal's wager in high school. We did world religion overview type course, and it came up there. And then in university I took 100 level philosophy for my arts credits, and it came up there, but I haven't sort of revisited it. That's more than a few years ago. So.
What's surprising to me is that, as the criticisms in the video pointed out, it's very easy to critique Pascal's wager. So I'm surprised that it's really even an argument in today's day and age. And maybe what you said, that people sort of disguise it. What do you have to lose? But the formulation of the wager to me is just, it's not a strong argument at all. It's silly, for all the reasons outlined in those videos. The most important being that you just can't make yourself believe, as if a God is not going to know the difference between genuine belief and a fake belief for ulterior motives, which by itself should probably put you in hell if there was a hell, if you were that kind of person, right? If you're just going to try to fool God with a thing like that, well, that's deserving of the opposite in my mind. So I just don't see the merit of the argument at all, and I'm surprised that it's sort of around today, several hundred years later.
I think
I would argue as well, anybody who puts forward that philosophy, what they really mean is, what do you have to lose by believing in my God, as opposed to a God?
Or it might be people that just have assume everybody around them is Christian or should be, and they are concerned about their friends and family and want to try to give them some way to not go to hell. Because, a lot of us, our families think we are going to hell, and don't want us to. And I can see where they might say, well, what harm could it do? Or try to get you to at least pretend.
Well, the very
notion,
most Christians, there are some other ones, but most of the Christians I've talked to and have heard and stuff always try to argue that their God is a loving, forgiving God, and going, but that's an oxy. How can a loving, forgiving God would not have a hell?
Exactly.
A loving, forgiving God would never think of the idea of eternal damnation. So that defeats their whole argument right there.
Have you seen George Carlin's clip about that? It's hilarious.
You may have.
All of George Carlin is hilarious.
Yes.
But yes, it's on YouTube. It's well worth, I think it's about 10 minutes or so. Yeah. I wanted to mention the point Brent brought up there. Pascal was a philosopher and, has a lot of other things, and that's why he's still studied. And I think the wager part is really simple for non-philosophers to understand. So it sort of, when you start reading him, it sort of comes up, and it sort of lives on just because it's easy to grasp. Even though you're right, I mean, I agree with you that it's not a strong argument for belief, and in fact, the easiest way to debunk it is to actually use God, a theist argument, to say you would know the difference, and genuine belief would be punished. So it's kind of amusing.
What do you think is the best answer when a Christian is arguing with you like that, that just try to believe, or at least pretend you believe? What can you lose? What do you say to a fundamentalist Christian, someone who's devout, to try to explain to them why you don't think it works, or you think it's a silly thing? What do you say to a Christian? Anybody?
I say I lose my ability to think rationally.
I usually come back that, I believe in evidence, so show me some evidence. And of course, there won't be any, but if they do pull out the Bible, and says, well, it says here it's true, and it's like, okay, well, you just went circular argument. But if I really want to get into it, I will then say, okay, if we suppose that is your holy book and it is true, you need to start explaining all the contradictions in it. And I got a couple that I just keep in my back pocket. And, I was actually on my way home from the Skeptics one night, back when we could get together physically. And some street preacher approached me on the C train, got a minute to talk. And I was like, sure, I knew exactly what it was. So let's do it. I got 20 minutes before I get home. And, I pulled that argument out and said, by the way, you're probably committing a sin here, because I bet you're got mixed fabrics on and a few things. And he couldn't back away from me fast enough. And I'm like, no, come on, I got more. And like, oh, good night. And it was a nice cap to a skeptical evening.
Yes.
I would say to the Christian that the word believe, if you actually look at the Greek, it's better translated beloved, so that you're saved by loving God, beloved. So it's not, I think in our time, we get Christianity very confused with this intellectual belief. And there's some very good arguments on scripture that that's not the original intent, especially when you look at 2,000 years ago when it was written. These were not intellectual people. It was about loving people. So, I mean, that's another argument against the wager then, is that, obviously you can't make yourself love something just, well, I suppose you can, but you can't make yourself love someone that's not visible and talking to you, etc. So there's that.
And I have trouble loving a genocidal maniac.
Yes.
Me too.
That makes me think of Bill Maher saying, I don't want the people running my country to believe in talking snakes.
I just wanted to say that I'm a Zeusian now. I'm coming out as Zeusian, and I'm kidding. I just had to throw that in there.
It goes well with your name, Star Chamber.
Star Chamber,
like
yes.
Personally, I prefer Odiaism.
Oh yeah.
Odianism.
I collected Thor comics when I was a kid, so I'm into the Asgardian thing. So.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just had to put that out there.
That's good, Vincent.
So.
Oh.
I always liked the movie Star Chamber too, so I always thought it was a good movie.
Wasn't Star Chamber a horrible movie? Like it was one of the worst movies out there.
Was it?
Oh yeah, it was really bad.
Kirk Douglas. It can't be that bad. Or Michael Douglas. Sorry, not Kirk. Michael. Anyways, never mind.
So Helen has joined us. We were just discussing Pascal's wager and, well, just a lot of things about it. Do you have feelings on it, Helen? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Finally, only took me an hour to figure out how to get on. But I was watching the videos. Yes. Pascal's wager. I guess for me, I'm probably similar in thinking that I don't believe in the religion, so that's irrelevant. I guess, you know, I think I agree with that. You know, if I got up to the pearly gates and if there actually was a being there asking me, I think I'd be better off being an atheist than being, you know, I think that if there is an all-being God, I think he probably knows that we made stuff up about him, and it's all wrong. So I'm just, yeah, for me, there's no conception on it. So I can't deny or agree or deny any belief in it. Is that the consensus? Are we all kind of on that stage? Yeah.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had an interesting thing when I was in the Army Reserve. Periodically, we'd have what was called a church parade, where we would all go to a church as part of our belonging in the military. And there was one of the guys in my platoon objected one time and said, "I'm an atheist, I shouldn't have to go to the church parade." And so our sergeant major said to him, "When you're in the trenches and there's bullets flying over your head, then you can tell me you're an atheist. In the meantime, you're going to the church parade."
Wow.
Wow.
There is an organization now, though, Atheists in Trenches.
Yeah.
I think there's an organization, they call themselves that.
Oh, really? Well, I
guess the point of that was there's an awful lot of people who suddenly get a belief in God when their life is threatened and they pray to God to save them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I used to think that. I used to say that to people, that you know, when the push comes to shove, you're going to be saying, "Oh, God, help me." But, you know, honestly, right now, if I have a couple friends that are going through terminal cancer, and yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's COVID and then there's cancer, right? Still going on. But and there are some of them I think I've mentioned before. Some of them are, you know, there's one, you know, who's a Catholic or a Christian, and there's one who's very spiritual. She's into spirituality. And then, you know, for me, I never, when I was Catholic, I always looked forward to dying, because I thought that'd be so great to finally figure this all out, to see this guy. And now I'm like, you know, whatever, I'm probably the same curious, like if we find out that there is a guy, you know, whatever, what can we do about it? It won't be me suffering, right? It'll be us, the people that are left behind that are suffering. That's the suffering. That's who I feel bad for, I think. I don't know if anybody else feels differently.
Well, I hate to use the word belief, but it's a handy word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the belief that when you're dead, you're dead. There is nothing else. So yeah, from that point of view, really, there's nothing. So there's no kind of downside,
right?
Except for the people left behind, who miss you, and you know, this kind of stuff. So yeah, death is harder on the survivors, really.
Yeah, wrap it all up before you die, so it's all tightly taken care of, and then that's the mission. That's where you're gonna make sure everything is done. What about the probability? I mean, there's the Earth is so many billions of years old, and now what about the probability that we only live this short 106 years, 114 years, that's it, and then we're extinguished. Is that, for you scientists out there, what is, because I think that's a low, I think the probability that something will go on, that's where I'm hooked on.
What goes on is all the other people, all the other animals.
Okay.
My little
human race.
chunk of existence goes away, but everything else carries on.
The impact we've had on other people's lives goes on.
Yeah.
Well, you know, coming from a Christian background and becoming an atheist, it took a long time. The one thing that I have a hard time with is death, life after death. So the feeling, I mean, because when you have that promise ingrained in your very bone marrow as a little kid and you're growing up, you know that when you die, you're going to go see the pearly gates, right? I mean, there was a while when I thought I might go downward instead of upwards. But I thought, I didn't think it was, I thought it might be more fun. But
you do.
That thought of you die and then that's it is a hard one for me to really wrap my brain around. Now, logically, I can say yes and all this, but there's still a part of me that clings on to, well, we don't know everything on the earth, and we cannot disprove God, right? So we don't know everything. So maybe there's just the teeniest little bit of a chance that there's like another dimension. Like, I certainly don't think that there's, you know, a red carpet and and everything waiting, but perhaps there's something, it may not even be anything you've expected, but.
You think your body would float up to Kolob, like the Mormons?
No, I don't think there's any floating. I think or riding of unicorns or anything.
Unicorns.
Like I really just wonder if there's a scientific rift or some.
What about energy?
Well, okay. So what I have placated myself with is, you know how molecules tend to stick together in a way, right? Like, so because we're all organized, but basically, you know, there's that question of what holds everything together. So I fantasize about this. When you die, your molecules attract, like you're traveling in the same pack. So you got all your family and you're a pack of molecules that are just traveling around. What that means, I have no idea, but it's just a little fantasy in my mind, right? That perhaps you transform into a different energy, and that those energies kind of cluster together.
You become food for the maggots.
Exactly.
I'll believe it when it happens.
Your body, well, exactly, and your body is food for the maggots. But and of course, I mean, you know, the soul is another question, but it's not logical. And I am an atheist. I just cannot. I wish I could make myself believe sometimes in something, but you know, it's just like these thoughts pass through my head.
I was watching something. I can't remember what program it was, but they said that the most probable, like we are very close. The most probable thing that we are developing, the closest technology to living forever, is downloading our consciousness to a computer. Kind of. I don't know if anybody saw that.
Done that.
Who did?
Black Mirror did that. An episode of that. Yes.
Yeah, that was
where
a good
you
episode.
downloaded your consciousness to a little thing that went into other went into like a different world, and you could experience your life at a younger age, kind of thing. It was fascinating.
But
I'm
we don't
terrified
even
to watch that show.
we don't even
Oh,
know
it's
what
so good.
consciousness is.
Right. I would argue the good old statement, I think, therefore I am, I think encompasses it. When I
Yeah.
stop thinking, when my brain is dead, I am no longer. I don't think consciousness is something that is extractable out of our brains. It exists inside our brains. And it's only our thinking that makes our consciousness exist. So
But what's interesting
I don't
about
know. I can't prove it, of course, but that's my thinking on it is, yeah, you can't take your consciousness out of your brain because it is part of your brain.
what's interesting about that though, Mike, is that I where my hope lies, and I'm agnostic about what happens after we die, but my hope does lie in consciousness, because it's the hard problem of consciousness. And science to date, maybe they will in the future, but to date, they have not been able to pinpoint with MRIs or fMRIs where consciousness is in the brain. So from a biological point of view, we don't know where this consciousness is coming from. So it's still a mystery. And so I guess I find some solace in that mystery.
Brent, do you think of consciousness as being a continuum? Basically, that if you're thinking less and less, that you, like Mike said, are you less I am until you become into oblivion? I mean, are you thinking of consciousness as being you either are or are not, or are you less?
Yeah, I don't know if I understand your question, but I think of consciousness as I'm aware, I'm self-aware that I'm alive. I know that I'm going to die, whereas other animals don't have that. That's what I'm thinking of consciousness.
But you know, some animals do, of course. So if you keep the continuum from us, who are very well aware, down to the amoeba, there's some place in there that you are less us and almost them. Is the point of when your consciousness gets down to that basically no self-awareness, are you disappearing at that point in time? Are you no longer I am?
I would think so. You would still be a creature. You would still be, you'd still be alive and being able to go on instinct. We still have instinct as humans, but we also have consciousness, which makes us quite distinct.
Is just the argument kind of sounds a little bit that people say about consciousness and souls is essentially that you either have a soul or do not have a soul. You don't have your soul disappearing slowly as you're unable to think better.
Well, what about, I was just saying, what about your consciousness and awareness before you were born?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I think therefore I am is a dichotomy of yes or no. You either have a soul or not. It doesn't really look at the part of it being a continuum or a possibility of that.
Actually, I'm reading a. Go on, Helen.
Go ahead, Lois.
No, I was just saying, I think this, I'm for me, this, the consciousness and soul are two, I think those things are a little not connected. I think the idea of having a soul is, for me, something that's a spiritual idea that I don't know, I don't necessarily believe in anymore. I you know, when I went through my spiritual phase, I still believed in a soul and that kind of thing. But a consciousness, even children up to the age of 2 or 3, or maybe babies have a, if anybody can jump in, they don't have self-awareness. that they are alive, or that, you know, that of other people, of what their reactions are, that when cause and effect up, you know, to a certain point. It's when they have that, finally, when they get to that point where they see a cause and effect of that's when they, I guess psychologists say, they're now conscious, because, you know, they obviously see that if they cry, if they misbehave, then they're going to we have fruit flies flying in my house everywhere. They're gonna have they have now made their mark on the universe. They are now conscious. So
okay, but you sort of believe that as you grow, you gain consciousness, which is a continuum argument. What I'm basically saying, that if someone were to ask whether there's a soul or not, I would bring out the argument of gradualism and continuum via evolution, or you could even take just with a human, in the sense that if you have a brain damaged infant right down to the point of virtually nothing, then where do you bring out the point of being a soul? I mean, it just doesn't make easy sense. It just
how do you define soul? Like why is a soul? For me, I'm confused on when you're saying soul.
Well, soul is something other than what your mind is. I look at the mind as being physical and the soul as being transcendental.
So you believe?
And so what I'm saying is that if, go ahead, Helen.
No, I'm sorry. So you still believe that there is, you in that transcendental, you have something inside of you, like that you would call a soul.
No, I'm saying that the argument of trying to say that there's a soul or a consciousness or anything along those lines, that it will be a very high level of consciousness down to a very low level and basically zero level of consciousness and self-awareness. Because of that, it creates a great difficulty in trying to say whether you have a soul or not.
You've got to read the book I'm reading. I think I've mentioned it before, Evolving Brains, Emerging Gods. Mm-hmm. And it discusses that very thing, and how you have to get to the point of self-awareness and become aware that life ends in order to even have the concept of a God.
Who's the author?
Let me see, just I'll open my
Evolving Brains. What's the second part?
Evolving Brains, Emerging Gods.
Okay.
And the author is E. Fuller Torrey.
Yeah, you mentioned that last time, and I was interested.
But what we're talking about is it goes through that so much. He's looking at, at the evolution of the brain, and it's pretty hard because brains aren't fossilized. But it turns out that the inside of the skull actually can show where lobes of the brain were, and can give you a pretty good idea of, what lobes existed when. Mm-hmm. And also he uses the development of a child in kind of relating that to evolution, and how, when a child, at what age they begin to develop certain abilities as far as, self-concept and the sort of a self-awareness. And it's well, I'm only about halfway through, but it's quite fascinating because it's discussing the very same things that we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah, it sounds really good. But, most theists believe that at birth, you get a soul, that you have a soul. A lot of them believe a long time before that even that you have a soul. But when you describe the issue of basically a brain dead person or something along that line, or if you have a two-headed person, which has happened, it becomes a lot trickier.
It's even simpler than that. What about the people who have had their brain split because of epilepsy? Now do they have two different souls? And where did these second
Their soul
come
has
from?
disappeared. It's only about 1/5 what it was before.
So from a spiritual point of view, I think most people think of a soul as something separate from your brain, separate from your consciousness. It's a
Right.
spiritual
The brain is
thing
physical.
that makes
The
us
brain,
different
yeah,
than
you're
animals.
right.
Right. And so I'm not saying I don't believe in it, but I'm saying people who do think of the soul as something
As the man in the machine.
outside of physical.
Yeah.
That
Well, it's something
makes
to
us
do
as
with
humans
God.
something different, and that soul potentially can go from body to body when we die.
Yeah, and especially in reincarnation.
Yeah.
And the soul does have religious connections and connotations to believing in God and spiritualism. The soul is separate from your consciousness, although some would argue that and say that there are crossovers. But I think that a consciousness is a physical thing that happens as you evolve and your brain cells. Now, what Helen said, which interested me, is when you start thinking about artificial intelligence and physically and scientifically transferring, brain cell copies over to an AI, could that be done? What would that mean? That question of
it's not even the brain cells, it's just the electronics. It's just
a neural pattern. It's
neural
the
pattern. Yeah.
Right, and then that would really create an interesting way of looking at consciousness if it were indeed possible.
Well, they say it's possible. That's the closest we're gonna get. We're not gonna get the flying cars, but we'll get there first.
Have you ever talked to a site, like there was this site called I Am God, I think it was called, or God I Am, and you could ask it any questions, and there's lots of them that you can talk to, and I would talk to it and I would try to trick, because I thought, okay, so this is either a computer or it's a bunch of people on servers who are just, what's the purpose of it? What is your name? I ask all sorts of interesting questions and get some very bizarre responses sometimes.
In the same way that we are self-aware, could AI be self-aware?
That's the question that a lot of people are asking.
I think
look out if the answer is yes. Look out.
Elon Musk says that's what he's most afraid of.
None of it exists at this point.
But he said some people say it's not possible,
not really
because there's always a
No, none of that exists at this point. All you have is some computer programs that can play chess really well, or pretend to be a doctor, analyzing the facts that are coming in. But there's no all-around intelligence in computers, and I don't expect that for probably 500 years.
But the computer should be able to analyze itself. Is that not self-awareness?
No, it's just
it's analyzing itself.
Still parameters, right?
I got on a much lighter side. Has anybody ever seen the old? For 1 year, the show was on TV. The Max Headroom.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it was utterly hilarious. It was.
Yeah, we're both old. Okay.
We thought that was really the thing, right? In the 80s.
Well,
he's been showing up in TV shows for quite a few years. I think the last one was Eureka.
Oh.
No.
Well,
anybody remember Eureka?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have the DVDs of Max Headroom if anybody's interested.
Oh.
It's hilarious. Oh, they did a great job.
I have a strange question out there.
Okay.
Just to
Convince.
ask. Do zombies have souls?
They're
You
supposed to
mean
be
Trump
there.
supporters? I don't know.
No. Zombies have souls. Well, I mean, I think anything can have a soul. It's because it's different from your conscience. The
Most
soul
of us
kind of
don't
is
believe
me-
souls exist.
Do you
right.
believe- yeah, I don't.
I don't believe in the soul. I mean, I can't. I can't
Right.
believe in it.
So
I can't
I
make
haven't-
myself believe in the soul. Don't make me.
well, let's say you did believe in souls.
Mhm.
So my question would be, at what point does the soul enter your body?
Good
At
night,
the point
Dee
of birth, which is arguable, because when exactly is it that you're born? Like when your head's out, your whole body's out, etc. Or does it get into you when you're a single-celled being?
Or
like
when you're conscious.
Well, it's floating around up there just waiting for the right person to. Everybody has I really tried to figure out what the soul was when I was a believer, and I never really found anything satisfying. So I kind of just let that one go. Not really, but I did. But I could understand consciousness.
I was really hooked in with Eckhart Tolle when he spoke about the watcher, or so you live sort of one consciousness where you're out in the world, you're talking to people, and then there's that person in behind you that's the watcher, that's watching you perform this stage performance that we do every day.
Oh my God, that's so spooky. And you know who else believes in that is that singer. What was that book called? Yeah, it is about your consciousness watching yourself be
It really messes
conscious.
with your mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the layers that you can, and you start to think about it and think about how much of us, what's the chemical reactions and what we have been exposed to, dopamine levels, all the chemicals that will cause us to think things and believe them, and repetition, just
well, we all like walk around and you second guess yourself, right? You're kind of, you're kind of, we're on this view, and then there's in your back of your mind, so that you're thinking, oh, did I say the right thing? Did I,
Yeah.
oh, am I, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that little voice behind you, and he identified that is your true inner self. That
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's the person. So for a while there, I was like, I had just eureka, I had figured it out. I know where my true self is. Like, it really messes with your mind, but it's really just, it's just your thoughts. It's just your thoughts. And
Well, that's if you second guess yourself, like I do all the time, that you aren't quite, that has to do with self-confidence.
Yeah.
And self-image.
Yeah.
And I would think that is the opposite of who you really are, almost.
And media, wouldn't you just love to compare our brains? Because think of the 100 bits of bytes of media that we've been exposed to, and subliminal seduction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every day we see, we're not even aware of it. But if we say grew up in the woods and never saw any media, and then you could just take brain scans and just look at the comparison to what do you think, Lois? Do you think there would be anything interesting in there?
Yes, very. Well, there have been a few cases of, what do they call them, children that have.
Like wild children, yeah.
Yeah, there's a word for it. And
Feral.
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 Yeah. And it's almost like there are certain developmental stages that if they weren't exposed, to people and culture, that they can't get beyond a certain stage. It's lost.
Well, what if you did have some, like you had contact and you had purpose, you chopping the wood and you're building an existence, but you're just not exposed to the media that we are. I mean, I suppose that would be looking back 200 years ago, right?
Less than that, I think.
Less than that, yeah. Where there's not this constant. I mean, the most you would see is some guy walking down or carrying his cart with pots and pans and, you know, selling tonics that would, you know, cure your ailments. Those were the early days of the early days of homeopathy.
Jim Baker was arrested and put in jail again because he was selling a COVID cure. Yeah, he was actually selling a bottle and he was touting it on his website. So he's been arrested and put in jail again for that, or prosecuted or something like that. He honestly was holding up some. I can't remember what it was, but so
what's happening to Tammy? What's happening to Tammy? Yeah.
They've been divorced. I think she passed.
Oh, she did. Yeah, she passed.
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
All this soul
Give
talk.
it another try. You got to give it to them.
All this soul talk, and I don't hear any disco music anywhere.
A little funky soul.
Yeah.
Got to play that BTS song.
I just marvel that I just notice every day, like I listen to a lot of music, that how much God language, soul, like in soul music, permeates our just general culture. And I often think about how long is it going to take for that to move on and leave our culture. Like it's going to take, I don't know, 100 years. Like I heard someone talking, it was like a Bill Maher, and he had a guest on saying that 26% of Americans, I think Bill Maher was saying this, that check off the box of other. But you know, if you went to say that, they would deny it, like they wouldn't say it, right? But they, in sort of in surveys where you don't have to identify yourself, they check it off. So how long is that going to take to increase and then to move on from this? You know, because it's even people that you would, like rock stars, you know, that you would think would never, you know, be godly, are putting God words and God songs and Jesus and help, you know, thank Jesus in their songs. And for me at this stage, every time I hear that, it's like a little, a wire comes loose or something in my head.
Be surprised at how many people still carry that faith around. Well, you might not be surprised, but they carry that faith around with them. They don't do anything about it. They don't go to church. They don't think about it much. They sin like crazy, if there is such a thing. And but they still, you know, when push comes to shove, they still, well, of course there's a God, you know.
They're wagering on Pascal's wager. They're going.
Yeah. They've been.
Well, there's the good
thing
old.
about Jesus.
As a Catholic, as long as I manage to get confessed to a priest on my deathbed, I'm good.
Right.
That's the Catholic way, yes.
You can make all the.
I can be a gangster and a mass murderer, but as long as I believe in God and confess my sins at the very end, I'm good. I'm up in heaven.
Yep,
Well, that's the same with
Christianity.
That's the same with Protestant religions. I remember my grandfather, my mother's father he had been a minister and he backslid, you know, and he became a sinner. And many years later, when he was on his deathbed, they said that he prayed and he was forgiven again. So he was going to make it to heaven. Everybody was happy.
So you just live a hell of a life, you know, and knowing that on your deathbed, you confess and I'm so sorry and everything. But what happens if you just, you know, get into a car accident, die suddenly? Whoops.
Yeah.
And God
well,
says,
that's why the Pascal's thing.
Pascal's way.
You gotta preemptively believe, so you're covered, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why they want you to go to church every week. It's not about the donations. It's so that you can confess every week. And then if you do die unexpectedly, you've only got a teeny little bit of sin.
Yes.
Wow. And it just doesn't make sense.
My mom, when my mom goes now, I tell her, at least Mom, make up some good stuff for the priest, because like I don't think he wants to hear about your cursing at all your kids every week, right? I'm like, at least give him something juicy, like you saw, you know, you covet the old guy down the block or something. Like.
Well, to be honest, like I would go to confession. I'm not going to confess the real stuff. You think I'm going to tell that priest the actual bad things I did? So you sit there and you go, well, I didn't say my prayers 4 times and I lied once, and you just make shit up.
Yeah.
That's what's called being a good Catholic.
Yes.
Because if you come off as too perfect.
Say, back to souls, everybody. I was wondering if anybody has heard a theist or apologetic come up with even something flimsy about some kind of mechanism between the soul and the mind. I mean, what you have to be able to affect energy or something physical to be able to push the buttons of the mind. Has there been anything that's been remotely interesting that anybody has heard? I can't think of anything.
Well, I guess the big question is, do we have free will?
We think we do.
It feels like it.
Or are we just a biological machine that's just processing the information that comes in? And
we're a
we would
meat
make the
machine.
same decision every single time.
Well, according to the Catholics, you become your soul at the point of conception is when you become the spiritual being, and that's why they're against abortion, is because in theory, as soon as the sperm fertilizes the egg, you're now a Christian soul or whatever.
That's what our belief was too, but we also believed in abortion. So we were.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. Do you have one soul or 2 souls at that time?
Good question.
Well, I mean, later on, you can have twins, of course, or triplets or whatever.
Right.
So what happens then?
I don't think they thought through the science very much. They just thought that at the point of conception, you become a
living
soul.
Yeah, and then if you ask the minister that, they say, because I asked a couple of cheeky questions, and they say, "Oh, for crying out loud, like just, no, it's something happens. Don't worry about it." You're like, okay. That's a good
Don't
question.
worry, God has it figured out.
That's right.
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, ours is not
That he
to
does.
reason why. Ours is to do in God. But the soul thing, as far back as I can remember, it had more to do with being a Christian and the religion that I was in, and God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost. And who the hell was the Holy Ghost? I never did find out. And it had more to do with that side of things, whereas your mind had more to do with the earthly things, science and that. But I'm curious about that. I'd be curious to see. I bet you in other religions there could be definite connections between soul, or your anima, your energy force, your ki, whatever, because some people refer to it as a ki, your energy.
Well, I think if I wanted to believe in a religion, I think I did like the idea of reincarnation and karma, and people getting what they. I mean, I think there's some sort of I guess I wouldn't call it karma now, but people that get theirs because they just set themselves up with bad energy, and eventually, well, they do bad things, or they do conniving, sort of evil things, like say someone we might know who's the president of the United States, and then eventually those things come to task, like they come to fruition back at them. Is that karma, or is that just happenstance? Does that just happen because you set yourself on a trail, you lay the crumbs down, and then that stuff comes up? So but I guess if I if I could pick something, I like the idea of karma and coming back, and him coming back as a cockroach or something like that the next life. You know, I think that's a good idea. If I believe
I listened to John Lennon too. Instant karma.
Yeah.
I was never so happy as when I lost karma out of my life, because I was kind of guilt. Karma is another term for guilt, as far as I'm concerned.
Karma's a bitch.
Yeah, so you
And
know,
justice.
if you go to the store and you keep that dollar that you were overcharged, you could feel guilty and it would come back to you. So it was a karma, and we didn't know about karma then, but it was a way that my British family thought about, that if you do bad things, they're going to come back to you. And one day I just thought, I'm so sick of this. And I thought, excuse my language, fuck karma. I am going to I'm not going to worry about it. You just
human.
If you're going to be always being good and you're a nervous wreck because you do the wrong thing, because something's going to come back, some bad's going to come in, or they're going to get you in the end. But come on, it just doesn't, it's so much freer if you just,
yes,
you're good because it's logical.
Right.
And it's nice and it's kind.
Logical, like reciprocity, you mean?
Just be good for goodness sake.
Is ethics basically the ability to make you feel guilty? Dave and I have talked about this.
I wonder about that sometimes, but I don't think so. I don't think it's the same, because karma is like actually a power. It's a force that lingers around, tallying up like some kind of voodoo computer, but ethics are just things that have been developed that would make people's lives, do unto yourself as you would have others do unto you, is kind of a, I mean, we still take a lot from some of the morals that religions lay down, but it doesn't mean we can use them without it meaning that we believe in God.
Religion took the morals from people's culture before religion was really organized.
Yeah.
And recently, I guess I've kind of gone to the, because I always thought the golden rule was a golden rule, but then I thought I heard someone say it's not really, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, because that's how I thought, but it's how they would like to be treated rather. So not how you think that they should be treated, but how they want to be treated. So that's something different.
Yeah, each different religion has different versions of the golden rule. It's very interesting, the wording.
Mm-hmm. But it's
from a relationship point of view, I totally agree with that generic golden rule of do unto others as you'd like to have actually served me very badly until I learned the right one. Yeah. Because I was under this belief that everybody wanted the same as I did.
Yeah.
I didn't understand different personalities and stuff. And it was a real eye-opener for me to understand the things I was doing that should have made the person I was in a relationship with happy weren't making them happy. Because they wanted different, they needed or wanted things. To me, love is expressed in certain ways, but to other people, saying I love you isn't good enough. You have to show them. But for somebody else, showing them isn't good enough. You have to tell them. So yeah, it's a secret is learn what they want.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the generic
find out if they're into
self-infliction
and then do it to them.
Treating other people well is the real concept there, right? It's but the detail behind the how do you treat them well.
What was it? Men from Mars or no? Men from Venus.
Men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
My ex actually.
I heard a great way to handle marital problems is, if somebody tells you they're having a problem with their partner, you tell them, okay, well, I'll tell you what, you really hate this person. And if you do, what you do is you treat them like royalty for 3 months. And then at the end of it, you tell them we're getting a divorce. And the guy went back to the person they were talking to, and they said, oh, are you going to divorce your spouse? And no, they treat me like royalty.
Oh, that's cruel.
Yeah.
It's
doesn't always.
an
That's actually a pretty good
exercise.
philosophy.
It's a job, and you can't take a vacation.
Yeah.
Man,
This
I'd like
this
to
is all
see
based on
someone
the
who
fact
do
that
that for
you're
3 months. 3 months, I think that someone would crack in that amount of time.
but that's all in the assumption you're in a relationship with a reasonable person. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you can treat them like royalty for years and they're still going to treat you like shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, but based on my logic, you would divorce them because they're not going to treat you like royalty, are they?
That's true. You're basically putting a time limit on it, so that works.
Yes.
Someone told me that if you refer to yourself in the third person, that you have some narcissism in you. Has anybody ever heard that?
Makes sense.
No, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
That does make sense. Yeah. Yeah. Again, we know someone who's like that, right? Who we
No.
but we know of someone. Yeah.
It means you have a great self-awareness if you say third person.
It's like George Costanza on Seinfeld when he talks to himself. George likes spicy chicken.
That may be different. I think if you're talking to yourself, it may be. Doesn't Yoda say,
Yeah. Yes.
What is it? Do?
Where I am.
Yeah.
Do or do not. There is
Thank
no
you.
try.
Yes.
Thanks, Vincent.
You're welcome. In fact, that's kind of silly in itself. So, but probably the writer has taken that from a religious text.
But without a doubt,
So
there are some seeds of great thinking from a lot of religious leaders throughout time because they were the educated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can't, discount all of them.
No,
For the time. For the time. I think this kind of is like, you have to put everything into a context. Like, someone that they were talking about, they ripped down Lincoln's memorial in the US recently. And everybody at that time, he was the most progressive as he was. Was he as progressive as we are now? Obviously not. But are we supposed to, just leave all that and not?
Brenda. Oh.
Bye.
See ya, Brenda.
Oh, bye.
Did John leave?
I think so.
We didn't get a chance to thank him for his talk.
Well, we will do that when we see him.
Okay, because I appreciated it. Mm-hmm. And look what it spawned.
Yeah. Yes. The demon spawn.
Yeah. Demon seed. Oh. That would be a name for a band with Max Headroom in it.
I always like being in this group because I was in a previous group called Grabba Jabba, and it's mostly for LGBTQ. But there's this person from Israel that absolutely cannot stand me because of me being atheist. And I definitely put my atheism out there in this other group. And it makes it so hard to talk about anything in this group because they are SJWs. And it just, oh yeah. And
what's an SJW?
to the extreme. Social justice warriors.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they have to make sure that they don't offend anyone. And if you start
atheists.
Oh yeah, and it just drives me up the wall how SJW they are. And
how can you possibly be against an atheist when your whole life has been shit because of religion?
It boggles the mind.
Yes, it does.
But yeah,
well, especially being queer, especially being queer, because, a lot of times queers are definitely discriminated against in any kind of religion. So I'm just wondering this sounds like something's not quite on balance there.
I think it's a stage.
I know.
People can't let go of everything all the time because, it's maybe a stage they have to get to.
Maybe, but to hate someone else.
One disownment or one shock at a time, right? Maybe.
Yes. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah.
There are rainbow Christians.
There are,
yeah,
and the Kensington Church is very accepting of the queer culture there.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to, you're still talking to Jesus and stuff. I find it's a little bit incongruent for me, but I think all the power, if they want to feel accepted by their church, I understand that.
Yeah, some people. I guess I'm wondering now, how, for me, what my steps going forward are, like what I want to do with this newfound knowledge that I found, and how I can, translate it to people that I think might be open or might be, even my brother came for Thanksgiving, and he is, he's never been one for church, and all of a sudden, he's divorced 4 times, living with my mom now, and he's suddenly found Jesus, and we just sort of, yeah, I don't know what he's looking for, but I just mentioned we had some talks about Trump, and he's a businessman that's, so I'm slowly trying to edge in one information session at a time, whether it's giving him knowledge about Trump and the conservative agenda, not that it's et cetera, or do I go about and try and explain to him the history and about religion and how it came to be, and maybe show him a video on, I'm trying to see which is the greater evil. What is the bigger point here? But I guess he's open to conversation. I said a couple of things and he was quiet, and maybe he was just being respectful because he hadn't been in my house for about 10 years, but maybe something rang a bell. You never know what's going to ring a bell with somebody, because it rang a bell with one of us. I don't know, someone, my neighbor, said to me, we were having an argument about a fence, and I said to him, do unto others as others would do unto you. And he goes, oh, so you're a Christian? Oh, so you're one of them? You believe that? And that, do you know what I mean? It's not that that's what's but I sort of around that point I was already questioning everything. When he said that, even though he was wrong, he's an ass, it still set a seed in me, right? It still said something to me that, oh, am I saying that I'm good because I'm a Christian? And no, it wasn't. I'm good because I'm a good person, and he's a bad person, right? But it set a seed in. So I'm trying to think of ways that I can move on from this with the knowledge, how I can spread it.
You mean move towards atheism?
Yeah, just give people. It's not even I don't like to say atheism. I don't even like to say to people atheism because it sounds like I'm a Satanist. You might as well say you're a Satanist if you say you're an atheist. I don't know. Is anybody else?
It's getting better. I mean, yeah, I know it was like
just
bring out the garlic and they put crosses in front of you before when you said you're an atheist. But if you I guess you could use
non-theist.
Non-theist or even agnostic seems to be palatable because there's
I
still
don't believe anymore
just a non-believer is good enough.
Yeah. I've found some information. I've done some research. I've looked at some stuff, and then that makes them a little curious. And they kind of think, yeah, what did you read? What did you see? I'm trying to start there. Non-threatening.
Especially with family, you've really got to pick your battles and start slow if you don't want to risk damaging that relationship. I'm the only atheist in the family, and it was really rough the first year or two, and lots has happened too, but people have different reactions to different things, and I think probably it would be more important if you want to maintain a relationship. I mean, don't push hard, but if he's curious, answer. And if you're curious, you can always say, hey, you thought any more about it? No? Okay, move on. And dialogue is just as important, because you might not ever convince some people, they just might use.
I'm here with the blue pill.
Yeah. And if that's okay for them, then are you okay with that? And if you are, then you don't need to push it. If you're not, you can make your decisions after that. So
I have a nephew who I've spoken to over the years, and he has had leukemia and was cured. He's in his second year of remission, and he and his wife believe 100% that it's God's doing it. God healed him. So what I've noticed over the years, and of course my brother, who was also a very established Christian, and Christian family, Christian church, boys clubs, you name it. He died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he had the entire church on his front lawn praying and praying and praying and praying. Everybody prayed for Donald. So when someone says to me that, yeah, exactly. When someone says to me, why, I was healed by God, and they say to me, and I say, well, oh, that's very nice. My brother didn't win that lottery. And they say, well, it's God's will. And then I say something really terribly nasty. And I try not to, but I think I'm allowed because, my brother was 39 years old. It wasn't fair. And God's will.
I would say something nasty. I mean.
Well, I try not to because I'm not a nasty person by nature, but I think that talking to Mike over the years, honest to goodness, it's like we have a pleasant conversation, but as soon as it gets near that zone, things start to get a little uncomfortable. So you got to rein it in. And I realize that it's very hard to have a meaningful relationship with anyone who, for me personally, who believes that strongly in God, and Jesus and the church and all that. There's nothing really, you can talk about sports and you can talk about your job and blah, 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 but it really is a fundamental thing about a relationship, isn't it?
Fear. I think it's fear, because everybody kind of has that doubt. They're hoping it's Pascal's wager, but I think it's a fear. Even for me, as I think of it analytically, I think there's that fear, like
from the Christian, you mean?
Well, just fear that there's a God and you're or it's a fear of that you don't have that sort of backup plan, I think.
Oh yeah, see, I don't feel the fear at all. I get bored. I get bored and
But that's what people have. They don't want that. They don't want to fear, so they just choose to believe.
Well, it's what I'm saying is it's such conflicting beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's superficial. What I'm trying to say is it makes for a superficial communion, because you're chit-chatting and stuff, but you both really, like, you know, I think what he believes in is such tomfoolery, and it's foolish, and it's a shame, and he thinks then I'm going to hell. So there's this, you know, there's this sort of subtle judgment from him to me, even though he means well, and there's a subtle judgment from me to him. And in any relationship, when as soon as I meet people and they have a strong faith and they seem to be attracted to me, I just like, I shut it down right away, because I can't see having, unless there's the little bit of seed of doubt, unless they say, well, I have been questioning lately and something. I'm like, aha, there's a chance, you know, but.
So I can't go over to your place and start talking about my faith in Zeus.
Zeus? Well, maybe, yeah, I think Zeus is okay. Zeusism.
It's funny because people can be passionately on, like, you know, Calgary and Edmonton. We have a huge rivalry with the Flames and the Oilers, right? And
yeah. Oh yeah.
Edmonton, and we, you know, the topic cannot come up. And even Calgary, even between Calgary and Edmonton, my cousin always bugs us when we go up there. He's like, so, you know, how's that crappy city Calgary happening? You know, any trees planted there? Anything going on? And I'm like, you know, I say the same thing. And you know, he honestly would like probably take me to task on how much better Edmonton is to Calgary, and so that we don't touch that topic. So I guess, you know what I mean?
It's like Trump.
You can't joke about it.
No, not if we want to have a nice evening, right?
No. Oh.
We bypass it, right? Can't talk about
when you meet someone who believes in Trump's politics and Trump, and I get shocked more often than not. A friend was sitting across from me, and I started making fun of Trump, and I said, "Oh, Trump's going to go out there. He's so great with his vaccine. He's so strong, and he got all the drugs that none of you guys can get. And I'm going to go kiss all the women. And I'm going to kiss all the men too." And this woman was getting like rising up, and she slams her hands and she goes, "Don't get me started. I support what he did." And I was flabbergasted. I was speechless, which is really rare. And I was like, "I'm so sorry. I had," and then she just ran off. And I said to the other people at the table, "I had no idea she was a Trump supporter." And they said, "Neither did we." So you just don't, you don't know, right? You know, the person's intelligent, the person is reasonable, and then that comes out, it's just like, whoa.
I find
you
it
question
ridiculous
that intelligence.
Like friends, you know, I find it a lot of racism, like people, I have a girlfriend, she lives in Toronto, and, you know, she feels that, you know, there's a lot of Chinese people that have moved into her neighborhood, and she's resentful of that. And that makes her angry. And she thinks, she believes that Trump is a good person because he believes that China is responsible for that stuff. And, you know, so I understand where she's coming from. I don't agree with it, but there's a context to why she believes that, and that's the only thing she's hanging everything on. So you see how it's just such a small, stupid thing. People don't, you know, really think about it, how they're biased.
It's really sad that just because their neighborhood has a lot of Chinese people. I live in Edgemont, and it's like 90% Chinese, but my neighbors are lovely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get it. It's not 90%, it's probably 60%, but still, you get what I'm saying.
I know, it's sad how people, you know, or, you know, they think because of the Chinese, they just have
Elvis is leaving the building.
Government.
Right, Elvis.
They correlate that.
Hi, Elvis.
Sorry, Helen.
Hi, Elvis. Take care of your soul.
I'd like to get back to that topic.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back to that topic on people overcoming health problems and then attributing it to God.
Mm-hmm.
The response that that I say to people now is that there's actually evidence in our world that God does not heal people.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at amputees, never in the history of the world or present has there ever been an amputee who has had a limb regenerated. So you have three choices. One, there isn't a God. Two, if there is a God, he discriminates against amputees, which, you know, isn't probable. Or there is a God, but he doesn't intervene and heal in this world. So I think amputees certainly points to, you know, either there isn't a God, or if there is, he's clearly not intervening and healing people, because you have some very good examples of what could be a great, you know, if you were a Christian, it'd be a great witness. Look, I lost my arm in the war, and now it's regenerated after a prayer meeting. I mean, just think how astounding that would be. And yet there's never any stories like that. It's always some mystery illness that mysteriously gets better. So that's what I respond to those people. But I mean, you have to be careful. They went through a difficult time with health problems, etc. So it's not easy.
Yeah, that's
true. But it's almost an insult to the doctors, though. I mean, they spent their lives, you know, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4, 5, 6 years of residency, and yet, oh, God healed me. You know, I feel like it's really an insult to doctors.
Makes you wonder why the hospitals aren't stocked with priests and ministers and such instead of doctors. Huh?
Exactly.
The other way to look at that, Lois, is I think a lot of those cases are the doctors making misdiagnosis and making errors, saying that, oh, you only have 6 months to live, when it's just a misdiagnosis and they're actually doing pretty good. And then they live on.
Spontaneous remission, which can happen.
Yeah, and then they attribute it to God, because the doctor said I was going to die in 6 months. But,
yeah.
The doctor could very likely be wrong, especially with chronic illnesses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I watched that documentary on Lourdes, and the actual priest doctor who's there. There's in the years and the millions of people that have been to Lourdes to heal themselves, they have only I guess accounted for 70, or said that 70 of the cases are miraculous. And he even admits that some of these cases quite often are known to the medical community as miraculously, like, in decline, just like a cancer would miraculously all of a sudden, for some reason, in one person, you know, go into remission completely and never return. Or, you know, someone's a woman can suddenly conceive again. You know, what, and it was just time. You know, who knows? You know, and so he even conceded to that. So out of those 70 cases, he still believes that not all of them, you know, even some of them were just attributed to just medical happenstance out of all those millions of people.
But there's also power in belief. Without, it doesn't need to be a God for prayer to work. I'm not saying it's reliable or anything,
about placebo,
right? But it's the placebo effect, right?
Yes.
And placebos
I can give you a placebo, and if you believe you got the real medicine, you can get healed to, you know, it depends to some degree, but there can be a lot of things.
But you have to wonder if the whole illness wasn't caused by their own neurotics,
psychosomatic.
Yes, and so when they got the fake pill, their mind stopped making the mill.
I believe there may be some of that, but I mean, you wouldn't do blind placebo testing of things if there wasn't a true placebo effect.
Yeah. Well, there is definitely. Yeah.
Look at what the human mind can do.
So and some of those miraculous cures could very well be, again, it depends on how drastic a cure and stuff, but nonetheless, a very strong belief in a cure can work. Not reliably, but it can happen.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
That's all based on whether or not whose opinion are they taking that from. I mean, if you're suffering from pain, you can't measure pain. If you have high cholesterol and you take a pill and you now have low cholesterol, well, I would say that drug works.
Yeah, but so here's an example. I watched a documentary on a placebo effect years ago, and an example that besides pills, they were trying to determine for people who had a certain knee injury, whether procedure A, procedure B, or the combination of the two was most effective. And as an extra, they decided to do the placebo effect. That is, for some people, they made an incision so the person would believe surgery was done, but did nothing other than the incision that makes the person believe they did one of the procedures. And there were people who got better. And years later, they before the thing, they could not walk without a cane and being in pain. And like 2 years later, and they're perfectly fine, simply because they believe
you don't know why they
surgery.
couldn't walk in the first place. Was it because they felt
it was a real physical ailment. But there is power in the mind to a degree to cure the body. I'm convinced of it.
There are very real psychosomatic cases of people being paralyzed or having, paralyzed from the waist down. That
Yeah,
are
like conversion disorder. Conversion disorder is something where, you'll get paralyzed on the side of your body for no real reason. And then you have to go through physical therapy to get it back. Like, it's not just instantly healed. It's like as if
it's real in the sense that it's really psychosomatic.
Yeah, I know somebody who went through it.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that it was like a demon that was coming down and sitting on your chest, and it just caused you to. Now I know.
That was in the woo woo.
That's right.
Oh.
Everybody, I'm gonna go and
try
and convert my husband some more.
Oh.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
Well,
maybe if you pray hard enough, you can cure him of religion.
I'm trying. He's cured of the religion. It's just the guilt he still has.
Good luck with the fruit flies.
Yeah, I know, right? I can't stop them. I have my wine. They probably like that quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. You do.
Have a wonderful night. It's lovely seeing everybody.
Nice to meet
See ya.
Next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm taking off too. Bye.
All right.
See you next
Oh, bye, Donna.
Bye.
Yeah.
So, if we can have a few people stay on, Lois, I want you to try something because Josh sent me something.
Oh, okay.
Said that we should be able to have more than just a co-host and a host. So in other words, I could maintain power and we can have, because it's so hard to pay attention to everything when everything's going on, right? So can you go down to where it says participants and pull up all the participants?
Okay.
And beside my name, do you see my name yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Beside that, there's a little dot. It says more or something like that. Little dots right beside my name.
It's under Lois.
No, it's just by mine because I'm host. There's the dot. So
so what you need to do is click on the bottom where it says participants.
Yeah.
And a panel should come up that has everybody listed.
Yeah, I've got that.
Right? And then so hover over me and it should have a little thing that says more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it.
Make me a co-host. Or what is it? What are the options there?
Okay, co-host. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So next I want you to make, say, Larry a co-host or somebody else a co-host. Let's see how many co-hosts we can make. You're right on the list, yeah. Because Josh was saying that we should be able to do more. So look at that.
Larry Williams is host now.
Larry's a host.
He's the host. So now, Larry, you need to go on and try.
No, it's gone from, the little
Oh,
dot is
so
gone from
Lois-
mine now.
Yeah,
Lois
so
has
now
lost it.
Larry's the host. So Larry, can you make me the host?
Well, no, I've got you as
Or-
co-host. There's two hosts.
It looks
there
like
you
we
go,
can only
Lois, you're
have a host
co-host.
and a co-host.
Oh,
Okay,
there you go. So look at
now
that.
Lois is a co-host again.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. So you're a co-host. Larry's a host. So now make Mike a host. Let's see how many hosts we can get. Co-hosts, not a host, but a co-host.
And not a Holy Ghost.
So you have to do that,
Holy
Larry.
host?
You're the master in this case. So,
Yeah, I'm a host now, but
oh, so
now
now
I'm the
Mike-
host
But
and
now
there's two
I'm off the
co-hosts.
list entirely.
Yes, you did, because you made Mike the host, not the co-host. So Mike, can you try
Your
making,
spirit left you, Larry, and came into me.
Mike, can you make more co-hosts? Let's see how many co-hosts, not hosts, we can make.
All right, let's see who we got left here.
That's really good. No, we've got two, so that's really good. So from now on, I'll just make multiple co-hosts and keep my host position. Now that I know that. So Josh is amazing.
So I haven't, okay, make host, okay. So I just made, do you want to change the host to Grant, okay?
Okay,
So
Grant.
Grant's now the host and I'm not.
So it looks like we can have two co-hosts and one host. It looks like that's what
that
we're
way,
gonna do. Yeah.
Well, we haven't tried to make 3 co-hosts.
Yes, we have. And
And the only option that comes up is changing host, it looks like. That's why you guys
Yeah.
keep changing them.
So it
But
looks
that's
like you can only have one host and two
Try that,
co-hosts.
Grant.
Yeah.
Grant, trying to make one more co-host.
I'm trying.
We can all learn this. It's all fun.
But
Thanks,
you,
guys
in
for
order
coming
to,
out.
in order to make one, you have to be a host yourself or a
Yes,
co-host.
that's correct. Yeah, so as a co-host, I can't, well, maybe I can. Let's see what
But
how
when you're a co-host, you can't.
Yeah, no, I can't make hosts. But I can mute. I can do things like that.
Oh,
Look at that, 3
Mike is now
co-hosts.
a co-host.
Well done,
Okay, now we have
Grant.
3 co-hosts.
And Grant is the
Yes.
host.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only the host can make somebody a
And
co-host.
Grant, you weren't anything at them.
So wait.
Okay, Grant, see if you can make another co-host.
So I can mute all. I could probably
We now have 3
rooms or
co-hosts.
stuff like that, but
if Adrian's a host and Grant is a host, then you've got 2 hosts.
Oh, we got
I'm
4
a
co-hosts now.
Co-host.
So we've got
You have one host and
Oh,
one
I'm a co-host. Oh, who else is a co-host?
We have 4 co-hosts.
Who's the host?
Grant.
Grant.
Grant has the power.
And then what about you, Adrian? Are you?
I'm a co-host.
Okay.
So I don't have
Well,
the
what
power.
am I? What am
Oh, there you go,
I'm-
ping pong.
Now ping pong's a
I'm
co-host too.
nothing.
Ping pong is a co-host now.
All right, I'm a co-host.
So I can mute you all. Ha. Oh.
No.
There. Ha. I muted everybody. Or did I? No, I didn't. Yes, I did. Okay.
But I unmuted myself.
That's right. You can unmute yourself, but I can. When you're a host, you can mute people. Other people can't mute other people. So there was a point during tonight where somebody had left their mic on, and I could hear conversations in the background.
Yeah.
But I couldn't mute them, and I wasn't really sure who it was because there was lots of people. We were just talking at that time, so it didn't really matter. But if you have multiple co-hosts, then we can play around and mute people.
So co-hosts can mute people as well?
And co-hosts can share their screens.
Okay.
So everybody else can't share their screens. So we're trying to figure it out to maintain, because what we're envisioning is when we're hoping by the time we get to We Can Reason, we're going to have 130 people or something. And that's too unmanageable in this sort of free-for-all kind of. So we're trying different things just as practice with a small group of 20, which is still a big enough, a big enough a group.
So with 130 people, you really can't see. So you're going to have different screens, right?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do, because we might have to upgrade to, say, a Zoom webinar for the conference. We won't be doing it the same as here, but we're just trying to get a handle on how we can do it. And this is kind of exciting. You guys know Skeptic's Guide, right?
Yes.
So I messaged Jay Novella to say, we're thinking of doing this conference in Canada. We have no clue how to do it virtually. Can you give me some guidelines? So he's already given me my first steps today.
Nice.
He got back to me within 5 minutes. I thought, okay, he's never going to respond.
Wow. That's so
it just
cool.
goes to show it actually pays to reach out to people.
Yeah,
Right?
it does.
But
Did you,
because we're trying to do a Reason conference, it's all about what they want to promote, right? So
Yeah.
that's why.
I think one thing you could do is, rather than the gallery view, you could go with the speaker view.
Yes.
So
yeah.
the minute that, you know, you hear a dog bark in the background or whatever, they'll come up and you just.
Yeah. And see, that would be really good if we get the webinar software, right? If we end up upgrading, and just for that event, we might have to hire a company or whatever. We have control over that then. So we have control over your view, and we have control. So in other words, you're not going to see everybody, because I've gone to some conferences as Lois, I know you have.
Yeah.
And you don't see other people, right? You just see the speakers.
Yeah.
Hey, Leah.
Oh, hello, puppy.
Hello, doggy.
Now this is a borrowed dog. Come on, Leah, come on.
What a pretty dog.
Oh.
Now you see the two different color eyes?
Yes.
One blue, one brown.
Wow.
That's typical with Siberian Huskies.
Okay, I'm going to head out now. You should check who's going to become the host now. When I leave, it will automatically revert to one of you guys, I would imagine.
Well, as soon as you leave, and if you shut down, we're all gone. Because you are the poobah.
So how do I get out of the host?
Make somebody else a host.
Make somebody else a host. Just click on
Right,
somebody's name,
okay,
hover
gotcha.
over it.
Good point.
Hi, Grant.
Bye.
Thanks, Grant, for doing
Hi,
that.
Grant.
Great job of making everybody co-host.
Take care.
Hey, Grant.
Adrian's the host now.
Oh, am I the host now? I'm the ground poobah.
I was saying that my wife takes care of dogs. I'm allergic to dogs and cats, but she just borrows them for a while, right?
I see.
That's nice.
Oh, Star Chamber, we need to make you a co-host too. There we go.
You're still recording. That's why I'm not showing my face. Just thought I'd let you know.
All this silly stuff about making co-hosts for live
It's all on there.
Oh, poor Josh is probably still out there. Hey, Josh, we tried it out if you can hear us, and it worked.
And it says live on custom live streaming service.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Right here. Look at that.
Yeah.
Stop,
and you can view it.
I could stop it. I stopped it.
Okay, Vincent, we can see you.
You have the power. Don't let it go to your head.
Recording.
It is. So I'm going to stop the recording. Do you want to stop cloud recording?